Okay, so talk number 9 on Nat Talks About It. Our title is Backslides and Second Chances. And as you can guess by the title, it's about spinning the block. And when we say spinning the block, we're talking about that phenomenon in romantic relationships where you go back to something from the past, right? You go back around, you spin the block. And this is, if it was a committed relationship, if it was just dating, seeing each other, or a situationship. However you define the relationship, it doesn't matter. If you're going back to it, then you're essentially spinning the block. This is something that I've spoken about with a lot of my friends who don't agree with me. I should put that out there. Most of my friends don't agree with me, so I'll put that disclaimer out there when it comes about spinning the block. And I think that a lot of the issue that the people that I speak with about this and my perspective is that there's this idea that I would never spin the block. And that's not really how I feel, and I'll explain. So I think that this talk, I'm hoping, will bring a lot of conversations between you and the people you care about, your friends, a lot of fun comments. I hope that you will comment on my Instagram, that you'll subscribe to the channel, and you'll give me some feedback on the topic itself. Some fun DMs. I'm expecting some fun DMs about it. And what it is with spinning the block for me is that anyone who knows me knows that I love love, right? I love love, and I'm a hopeless romantic, and I think love conquers all. But when it comes to something that I've already done, it gives me a lot of anxiety and fear to go back to it, right? Because I always think of, okay, well, what was the issue? Why was it over, right? And what do I have to tell me that that issue is no longer an issue? And most of the time, that question can't come with any guarantees. And I think that the first time you handle someone, regardless of who it is in your life, will never be like the second time that you handle someone. So I think that handling someone the second time essentially means that you mishandled them the first time, right? Because if you didn't, then there wouldn't be a second time. And when you mishandled me, or I mishandled you the first time, now the second time we have more at risk. Now there's more of everything invested. So I have more to lose the second time than the first time. And that comes with a lot of anxiety. That comes with a lot of fear that I'm not really running to experience. I'm sorry, but I'm not. So I think that a lot of the people I talk to are more risk takers, more like no regrets, live life in the moment, and those type of things, which I don't knock, right? I absolutely support everybody else in their journeys, but that's something that's been challenging for me over time. In all honesty, I've only spun the block one time in my 20s, briefly, and a possible second time, right? And I say a possible second time because I'm not really sure that this is spinning the block, right? I'm not sure that I believe that because I'm not sure that it was actually over. And we'll go into that. I'll go into what I mean by that when we start talking about the actual spinning the block. So part of why I wanted to talk about this, there's two reasons. The first is everybody has probably seen the Ashanti and Nelly reality TV show on Peacock, We Belong Together, right? And the premise of the show is it's a reality show about their day to day, but it's really based on how they were together over a decade ago, and now they spun the block back to each other. And essentially, the show shows us that to them, they believe they were meant to be, which is why, and that they belong together, which is why they were able to do this. I'm a big Ashanti and Nelly fan. I'm still half and half on the show. I really hope that their marriage and their family and everything works out for them. It's a very beautiful couple, but the show is leaving me a little underwhelmed. But I still think that the whole spinning the block thing, using them as an example, is interesting to talk about. So that's the first reason. The second thing is this whole Mercury retrograde that we're in, right? So about a week ago, I had posted on my social media a clip of an article regarding the Mercury retrograde that is going on. And the Mercury retrograde is supposed to be ending on August 10th. So depending on where you are with how you believe astrology, be careful out there, right? And that's exactly what I had posted on my social media. So those of us who follow astrology, right, we know that the Mercury retrograde is associated with things coming back into your life, right? So that whole backwards motion of life. And we often think about exes when it comes to that. So astrology is not a science, and I'm not really, although I think astrology is fun to read and listen to, I don't really use it to guide my life. But I do admit it's very interesting, and the Mercury retrograde phenomenon is definitely one that is interesting. So Mercury retrograde, what it actually is, right, outside of the astrology realm, it's the optical illusion that when you see Mercury from Earth, it appears during this period, and there's a few of them in the year. I know we're in one right now. I don't know when is the next one, but we have a few of them in the year. And the idea is that when you look at Mercury from Earth, it appears as if it's going backwards on its orbit, which for a planet, that's pretty interesting. So when Mercury, but it's really not, it's just how it's appearing, which is why it's called an optical illusion, right? And those of us that know what Mercury rules, what the planet rules, all the planets are known to rule different things. And Mercury is the rules communication, travel, and technology, right? So the idea is that when Mercury is in retrograde, these things will be off sync, right? So they tell you, don't start travel plans when Mercury is in retrograde, right? Technology is bound to disrupt in Mercury retrograde. And the last one, which is communication. And what's the basis of relationships? Communication. So if communication is disrupted, this is where we talk about text messages, interpreting dreams, reunions of people that were in your past, people from your past coming back in. It's a complete disruption. And it's so much so that you will see on social media, I'm guilty of this, you will see on social media that people like me will post about the potential consequence of Mercury retrograde. And of course, this has no evidence, right? This is definitely not a science. It's not even astronomy, right? That's why it's astrology, and astrology is not a science. But if you do believe in Mercury retrograde and you believe that there are things that have happened in your life, a lot of what you will see is that during the Mercury retrograde, you'll see how you uncover truths, things that you thought were happening. Now, all of a sudden, Mercury retrograde, you're like, oh, that's the affirmation. I know that now I got the confirmation that this was going on. And you also tend to close emotional chapters for yourself. So a lot of times people that were together come back around together, and during this period, it doesn't work or it does work. So it's associated with a lot of relationship confusion, exes that resurface, and just like a pull to unresolved relationship issues, right? So a lot of times you'll see on social media, you'll have conversations with your friends and they'll tell you, oh, I had a dream about this girl and it's from their past, or I had a dream about this guy and it's from their past. So, I mean, you can take it as Mercury retrograde, you can take it as a warning, right? I'm not going to make any decisions. And in astrology, that's actually what they tell you in Mercury retrograde. Don't make any big decisions because it is likely that you're making it in a space of confusion, in a space that's not real. But that's very hard to say because the retrograde isn't real. It's an illusion, right? The planet actually is not moving backwards. It's exactly where it's orbiting, exactly how it's supposed to, but it seems as it is. So if it seems as it is it really having an influence in our relationships? I'm not sure. I know that I do read about it. I think it's interesting. A lot of times in retrograde, I will go ahead and say that that's responsible for something that didn't go as planned. I'll say, oh, this is retrograde, right? So because we are in a retrograde right now, and because, like I said, I was moved by the new reality show with Ashanti and Nelly, I said, hey, let's talk about it, right? So why do we spin the block? That's really the big question. It's the big question when I talk to people who do it, people that have done it. I can answer that for myself. And it seems like it's a lot of different reasons, right? For a lot of people, sadly, it was loneliness, right? Something ended and nothing replaced it, and you were lonely. For some people have said it's validation, right? Validation that this thing mattered, that I mattered to this person. Believe it or not, some people have also done it for closure. I don't think it's a good I don't see how spinning the block can bring you closure. I think that closure can look differently, like a conversation, a letter, a text. I don't know that you actually have to spin the block to get closure. But regardless, this is what the people have said, right? We have growth, unfinished business, boredom. So I don't know what percentage of what. What worries me about these reasons is loneliness and boredom, right? Loneliness and boredom. I feel like when I've heard these stories, right, there's always a percentage of, regardless of what the reason was, there's always a percentage of opportunity, right? It was there. It was available, right? And that is why I think that the access that people who have been in your life have to you and you have to them is very important. So when you have exes in your phone book, exes in your social media, people that you have been with, there's a certain kind of access to that. And I think that what makes spinning the block risky when you are in a committed relationship or when you're not, it's equally important. What makes it risky is that you could potentially be repeating a pattern or an undesired outcome that wasn't productive for you, right? There's a reason why this was over, whatever it was. So if you're spinning the block, what have you really done to figure out if what didn't work is still not working? So that's why I don't like when my friends say that I don't support spinning the block. I actually do support it, but I like to hear more about what has been different from the last time that these two people were involved. And that brings me to the first thing that I was saying when I said I may have spun the block a second time. I can't really tell yet. And the reason why I say that is because when you spin the block, so if two people break up today and they re-engage 3 days later, is that spinning the block really? Is a breakup of 3 days, is that really a breakup? I'm not sure about that. I kind of feel like, how could something really be over in 3 days if it was meaningful, right? So with the possible spin the block that I'm referring to, it's a 3-month time thing. And in 3 months, that relationship was not over for me. It wasn't over in my heart. It's not over in my head. It's not over in any way. So am I really spinning the block? I'm not really sure that I am. I think I would be spinning the block if we were actually over and I went back to it. So, but I'm open to see what everybody thinks. How long after the disconnect is it spinning the block? 3 days, 2 weeks, a couple of months, a year? Because I would argue that if you get back together after a year of disconnecting in any way, I think that's actually spinning the block. And that spin the block I do support, because I'm not the same woman I was last year. So I know that there are people who can make a lot of change in a year. And that I support. If both people have made changes in understanding, have gained clarity, then that's something that I think is worth re-exploring. But it's been 2 weeks, it's been a month, it's been 2 months. What could you have possibly changed or learned in that time to be able to go back together? And that's when I kind of start thinking like, oh, so you're just playing games, right? You're just playing games. And that I'm not into. So I talked a little bit about why I think that it's risky and to proceed with caution with it, right? And what I think that I find when I talk to people about it is that, first place, I've rarely spoken to anybody that has not regretted spinning the block. It's probably a handful of people that it has worked out for. Most people are like, I shouldn't have done that, right? And I think there's value in that thinking, because I think that what happens is that you confuse it with something else, right? Because this thing has come back around, now you think it's meant to be, right? It's for a reason. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes people are just bored and you just allowed them access into your life and you pushed yourself into theirs. That's it, right? So I've heard people say things like, well, while I was in California on a whole other coast, he was at the airport. Okay, he was at the airport. That doesn't necessarily mean that because he was at the airport, it meant that you needed to revisit that, right? And people really say these type of things and they guide their life by that. I do believe in things being meant to be. I do believe that the universe will bring you signs to guide you along to make decisions. But I also think that we make a big deal out of a lot of things that are just normal, right? And that's what I think is risky, because if you're thinking that it came back for a reason and you're trying to search that reason and things are meant to be, so this is meant to be, how far will you go to prove that theory right? And then that clouds your clarity about the relationship, about things that might be going on. And I need clarity in everything that I do. Confusion is I don't thrive in confusion. So for me, I just kind of let those things be. Like I said, I spun the block in my 20s, and I think that the reason in my 20s it was unfinished business. I do agree with that. I think there were things that he and I had to figure out, right? Why did we let that go that way? And it was short-lived, right? It was maybe a year after we reconnected, so it wasn't anything that lasted a very long time. And then after that relationship, I went on to have my children and my family and things like that. And then the possible spin the block, the most recent example, that's, I think, more about something that wasn't really supposed to end, right? I think that one would align more with growth, right? A lot of things that as a couple need to happen to completely explore something. It's a connection that doesn't feel ordinary. It feels different, and it's mutual, right? It's something that we both feel, so it's something that deserves to be re-explored. But again, I don't think that it ended for long enough, right? I don't think that a 3-month disconnect is long enough for a strong connection to be dead. And I do think that to spin the block, it needs to die to do it correctly. And I don't think that we've had that. It didn't really die for us. But we'll see. I'm interested to see what you guys think, what you guys feel about spinning the block. I'd like to know who's done it, who did it work out for, what spin the block story did you have? Because I've heard some interesting ones. But I've rarely had any successful anecdotes, stories about spinning block. So I don't know. Proceed with caution in this Mercury retrograde. That's what I'll say. So that is it for spinning the block. Make sure you subscribe to the channel on YouTube. Leave a feedback, leave comments, questions, and anything else you're inspired to. See you for talk number 10. See you then.